Okay, it looks like everyone's seated. So the time being 12:20 p.m. on March 16th, 2022, I'd like to call this meeting to order of Kane County's American Rescue Plan Committee. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bates.
Bates here.
Brown.
Brown here.
Frost.
Frost here.
Gums.
Gums here.
Kenyon.
Here.
Leonard.
Leonard here.
Martin.
Martin present.
Molina.
Molina present.
Strothman.
Strathman here.
Tepe.
Tepe here.
And Sanchez.
Sanchez here. All right, we have a quorum. If someone could please ask for unanimous consent to approve the minutes of February 16th, 2022.
Gums so moves. Gums will second.
Okay, Bates asked for unanimous consent. Is there any objection to such action? Hearing and seeing none, the minutes are approved. We have public comments on agenda and non-agenda items, and I have two speakers that I am aware of. And if there are any more after these two that are in the audience, I will call for them. So first up is Julie Yurko with the Northern Illinois Food Bank. Julie, will 3 minutes be sufficient?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you to the board for allowing me to have this opportunity to talk about our request for funding from the Community Support Allocation for Food Assistance. We look forward to your approval, the board's approval of the committee's recommendations later this week. I wanted to share just a little bit of information about our food bank's impact in Kane County. Together with our food pantries, Northern Illinois Food Bank is distributing 750,000 meals each month to an average of 34,000 Kane County residents. Our member food pantries, there are 30 in Kane County, are distributing 88% of this food and depend on the food bank for much of the food that they need to serve the neighbors that are coming for assistance. The remaining 12% is distributed through our own food bank programs, direct to neighbor programs, serving our children and seniors through mobile markets, and our online food pantry, My Pantry Express. Last year, the food bank and our member agencies distributed the equivalent of 12.8 million meals in Kane County through 132 different program and agency sites, 88 of which are focused on our kids. I don't need to tell you that it has been an unprecedented 2 years for all of us. And our Kane County residents are making very hard choices between paying for food and other necessities such as housing, utilities, and transportation. Here is a story that I want to share with you from the Two Rivers Head Start in Aurora. One of our neighbors, Angel, had lost her job and then she suffered health issues, so she wasn't able to go back to work. Because of this, she couldn't get the groceries she needed. She couldn't afford them for her and her family, and she started to skip meals. As she shared with us, she can stay hungry all day, but she can get by with one meal, but her children cannot. When she found out about the food pantry, she was so relieved. She was able to get the food she and her family needs that they want in order to thrive. She said to us that she so likes being able to pick what she wants. She hates wasting food and so loves that she doesn't waste food here. Angel brings home these nutritious groceries for her daughter and her 16-year-old son, and she is so, so grateful. Northern Illinois Food Bank, we source a lot of food. We have purchased significantly more food due to COVID from manufacturers and distributors. We buy it in bulk to get the best possible prices, and we pass these savings on to our member agencies. Funding awarded through ARPA is going to be used to purchase food that will be made available to our member agencies at no cost. To provide you some context, prior to the pandemic, we spent about $7 million on food annually. Last year and this year, we are purchasing $18 million worth of food. That has increased our annual budget from just over $20 million to almost $40 million a year. As you know, funding allocated to food pantries was just 12.5% of the total community support allocation of the $2 million that was awarded to the, food pantries were allocated 12.5% of the $2 million, and that $2 million is just 2% of the ARPA funding for the county, which is over $100 million. Given inflation being so high, coming on the heels of the pandemic, the need for food assistance is growing. We are seeing more and more neighbors coming to us over the past 3 to 4 months, at least 14 to 20% more than we saw pre-pandemic. We are requesting that this committee consider offering a second round of competitive grants for food pantries, or make additional funds available based on the requests received that were over $1 million from the food bank and our food pantry partners. Thank you so much for considering this, and thank you so much for your support.
Thank you for being here with us this morning, Julie. The next speaker, I have Jeff Lynham, Village President of East Dundee, and I believe he is in the building.
I am.
Jeff, you got 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you, Jason. Jared. My name is Jeff Lynham. I'm the Village President of East Dundee. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to let me present an idea that we have in our downtown. I've been well, give you a little history. I'm a 46-year resident of East Dundee. We're located, in fact, just north of Elgin along the Fox River. And I've been on the board now for 15 years, the last year as village president. And about 10 years or so ago, we made an effort to build up and to develop our downtown area. And we have met with some success in that. But as you can imagine, with that kind of success comes the need for parking. And that's what we're faced with right now, the need for parking. We currently in downtown Dundee have about 120 spaces on street parking. And with a number of new businesses that are coming in, along with the potential development down the road, we have an opportunity to build a parking deck structure, a 2-level parking deck structure that's going to accommodate another 100 to 110 spaces. We've currently raised about 20% of the need, which is likely to get to about the $5 million mark. And so what I'm wondering is if you would be willing to partner with us to bring about this project. Now, it actually has an enormous amount of potential for the benefit of our village, of course, but also for the county itself. It's not specious logic to suggest that this investment would help us both. If we're able to essentially double our downtown parking, we could double the amount of patrons that we have at our restaurants and our taverns and our shops, which would essentially double the amount of tax revenue coming in both to the village and to the county. So what we're hoping is that you'll be able to, through the ARPA funds, help us get to that goal. We have got all the ducks that we need for this type of project in a row. We've got site availability. We've done traffic and parking studies. We've conducted engineering reports. We have renderings. As you'll take a look, the handout that I gave you will give you an idea of the renderings that'll be done. And we also have some cost estimates. What we're still lacking is, of course, funding to bring it all about. So I would just like to have you take a quick peek at this. And we have just a really idyllic and quaint little downtown that has, like I say, a significant amount of downtown potential or development potential, I should say. But we really need to address the parking first because we can't allow the cart to get before the horse. It was about 7, 8 years ago, I brought this need up before our board, and unfortunately it was not met with the same sort of urgency that I addressed it. Was told that this is a good problem to have, needing more parking. While that may be true, a good problem will turn into a bad problem if it's left unchecked. And with this situation that we're faced with in East Dundee right now, we're pretty much there. So again, what I'd like to just offer is the opportunity to partner with us and bring this project about. So if you'll take a look at the information that I've proposed, and feel free, I would welcome any questions at all to either myself or to Erica Storley, who's our new village administrator. And our phone numbers and email addresses are on the back sheet there. So if you'll take a moment to read over this material, I would really appreciate it. And then any feedback would be more than welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynham, for being here and speaking to us today. Okay, next on the agenda, we have chairman's comments. Nothing substantial for you today, so I will just hand this over to Mr. Phillips, our program manager, for his update.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Peter Phillips, the American Rescue Plan Program Manager
And we're going to start with the slide with the community support grant timeline to show you, primarily because we are at a significant milestone with the community support grant. There's a diagram with the timeline. There you go, thank you. So as I've indicated with the green line there, for those that can see it and have the handout, we are at March 16th on our timeline devised. This is the Ernst & Young timeline that they devised, and you can see that we are on pace for the timeline that was presented in December. So we are at the grant award decisions made by Kane County and distribution of grant agreements, which we have the end date for that is the end of this month. So we are right on course for doing that. So then we have a slide with a checklist of some of the items that were completed during this period. I'll just run through them quickly. If you have any questions after I'm finished, I'll be happy to answer them. So the community support grant timeline has been, we established the parameters for the community support grant, which took a bit of work on the committee's part, devised the community support grant application, which took a lot of work from the state's attorney's office. We built submittable application and that functionality. Also, the state's attorney's office participated in that, as well as significant participation from IT. We wrote and posted, again with state's attorney's participation, the notice for opportunity, and our new PIO had taken care of press releases associated with that. And of course, the grant application portal that we had open that brought our community support grant applications in, which we, Ernst & Young, and Chairman Sanchez and I have done our initial review and vetting, and then you all have gone through the exercise of the 2 rounds of committee review of the recommended amounts. And today we will review the next slide, which is the spreadsheet that is the culmination of your work, where we have a chart with the CSG application committee member award recommendations, which is the last of our 3. So, and this is the document. You have the handout and the printed on oversized paper to keep it all on one sheet. It kind of distorted it. I think it presents best this way. And I'll now turn it over to Chairman Sanchez to speak to this chart.
Well, we'll bring this up again, actually, Peter, when we get to the resolution.
Okay. And that is the extent of my update, Mr. Sanchez.
Okay, any questions from Mr. Phillips? All right.
Actually, I neglected one part. As we've gone through the several meetings, we have been very busy, but I do want to acknowledge the patience and hard work that the committee has done assessing the community support grant thus far, and also recognize the hard work that many departments have done in addition to their regular workloads, the work that particularly in some of these departments have a number of people, but if Michael and Isaacson in healthcare, specifically Vince Coyle in state's attorney's office, who now is supported by another assistant state's attorney, Steve Ford, and they are very involved and work very hard on everything that we have worked on thus far, as well as finance and the county board staff themselves. So I'd like to acknowledge all those departments and people that have worked really hard along with us. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, Brown.
Mr. Brown, go ahead.
Brown with a comment. Yeah, as long as Peter brought that up, I wasn't going to until the end, but
along with acknowledging everybody that he just brought up, I want to say that over the last few months, Jarrett, would you say, I've been involved with you and Peter and all the people that Peter mentioned on the Tuesdays and Thursdays phone calls, all the way up until about 2 or 3 weeks ago when I kind of bowed out on my own, because now you're down to just a technical portion of getting this done. Policy decisions have all kind of been made and directions have been made by now. But I just want to acknowledge not only the people that Peter mentioned, all the hard work that they put into this, but also Jenny as the recording secretary, I guess you could call yourself, who's also been on those phone calls. And I know has worked day in and day out with Jarrett for all of her hard work on this and keeping everybody in the direction that they need to be, because she would always follow up with who's going to do what after a phone call. And then lastly, Jarrett, I want to commend you for all the work you've put into this. The time I've been involved in it, you know, we're county board representatives. We're not staff, but you have done the work of staff. So I want to thank you for all the work you've put into this, because I couldn't have done what you've done.
Well, I appreciate that, Dave, and I'd like to echo your comments and Peter's as well. It's a team effort, and we've still got more work to do with this grant money from the federal government, but a lot of work has been put in by a lot of good people. So thank you to everyone. Absolutely.
Hear, hear. Thank you for your hard work, Jarrett. Definitely, and everybody.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments for the program manager at this point? Okay, we will move on. The next discussion item, the 2021 payroll reimbursement update. Finance Director Onzik had brought this to us, a resolution that he is putting together for the payroll reimbursement, but it didn't make it in time for this agenda. So he did ask if I would ask consent of the committee to just forward this on to finance and executive and then county board so that we can get it through. I think there's a bit of urgency on his part to have us officially reimburse the money. And I don't have the figures yet. He is working on that. It's a lot of work. And as some of you may realize, finance department has been going through their end of year audit process and have been extremely busy. So basically, he's going to put it on finance and send it through the committee flow unless there is any objection from anyone on the committee. So I will ask right now if there is any objection to that maneuver.
Question, please.
Ms. Bates.
No objections, but so this is just to pay back the public safety?
Yes, so any eligible any eligible staff in the sheriff's office and then the public health department. With the CARES Act, it was assumed that all staff was responding to COVID, and now with the ARPA, there's a little more of a restriction on it, but it's the staff members who are spending a considerable amount of time responding to COVID.
So there's no surprises in this report?
No.
Okay, no objection.
Mr. Chair, Tepe here.
Mr. Tepe.
Will the details on this be vetted by the consultant and by our staff?
Mr. Phillips, you might have the answer to that. I believe that they may have already talked to finance about what is eligible, but Mr. Peters, do you have, or Mr. Phillips, sorry, do you have any additional comments?
No. Not until we see the finalized document, but I'm certain Mr. Onzik's going to be thorough and that the document's going to be pretty detailed. So
I understand. I just didn't know if the consultant and our staff and you were going to be able to. Yes. So you will be vetting it before it goes to the committees.
Before it comes to you, yes.
Thank you. That's what I want to know.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Jarrett, question, please. Brown.
Mr. Brown.
For clarification on this payroll reimbursement, this money is going to be used. I'm going to use the sheriff as an example. If he had, or I'm going to use the health department. I don't know who I'm going to use. I'm going to use employee A as an example. If that employee A spent time working on COVID and we're going to reimburse his pay for this, but he didn't work any additional hours, that reimbursement money is going to be available for other purposes. Am I correct?
It's going to go into the COVID savings fund. So that will be then the purview of the county board to decide what to do with that money. And that's a fund that we created, I think more unofficially under CARES Act, and we recently created more sophisticated actual fund for it.
So the monies that we're talking about will be available for other purposes should we decide to do that.
Yes, it's a reimbursement. So once we claim this reimbursement for payroll, it's money that is just back into our general fund essentially.
Thank you.
Within that COVID fund though, yes. Okay, any other questions or comments on this issue?
I'm sorry, that just confused me.
So basically, Mavis, once we reimburse, once we approve this payroll reimbursement, whatever the amount is, that money then goes back to the county.
It doesn't go back to like the part of the budget that those workers work for?
No, it doesn't. No, it goes into the COVID savings fund. And from there, the county board can decide to do whatever it would like with it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So if there are no other questions or comments, I will assume that we have committee approval for Mr. Onzik to put this on the finance agenda and move it up to the county board. Okay, we have nothing under other committee matters. So we will get on to our resolutions. We have the first one, authorizing the award amounts for competitive community support grants and the execution of community support grant agreements. If I could get a motion in a second to discuss and potentially pass this resolution.
Bates moves.
Bates moves.
Brown second.
Brown seconds. And I'm going to turn this over briefly to Mr. Phillips. And Blair, if you could pull up that chart again that shows the award amounts that were recommended by the committee.
Okay, so this is Peter Phillips again. You'll find that this chart is associated with the resolution. Bless you. The resolution will ultimately authorize, upon your agreement on these recommendations, the execution of these grant agreements and the disbursements. And you'll find that we minimize this chart. We have the cumulative chart available, will be in the SharePoint site, but essentially we have the maximum amount of award, which was determined by the initial resolution for this community support grant, is starting award amounts. And then each member went through 2 rounds of assessing the initial starting award amount. Each member assessed that per applicant and then gave their own recommendation for award amounts for round 1. We averaged those numbers out, devised a second spreadsheet with those averages as starting point, and then members went through and assessed one more time and adjusted or not the award amounts, which ultimately in the right-hand column is the culmination of 2 rounds. And these are the settled averages recommended by the committee for all 3, the mental health 2, the homeless shelters, and the food pantry efforts for the community support grant. Ms. Sanchez.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments on this resolution?
Bates, please.
Ms. Bates, go ahead.
Wow, I think we've done it. And I think that's fantastic. Thank you, everybody. I won't name you all again. And I think this does show me, and I hope the other committee members, that we definitely need another round of community support grants. These are good. And they look pretty small to me in view of the need that's out there in the community. So I hope this is a great accomplishment for all of us and exciting. And an indication and impetus and incentive for us to go for another community support grant. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Ms. Bates. Anyone else? Okay, hearing and seeing nothing else from the committee. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Bates?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Braz?
Braz, yes.
Gums?
Gums, yes.
Kenyon?
Yes.
Leonard?
Leonard, yes.
Martin?
Martin, yes.
Molina?
Molina, yes.
Strothman?
Strathman, yes.
Tepe?
Tepe, yes.
And Sanchez?
Sanchez, yes. Okay, the resolution is approved and will make its way to the executive committee. We have another resolution authorizing the position of part-time administrative coordinator. Ms. Allen, did you have a comment or question?
I did have a question. As an outsider, can that table be attached to the resolution so that we can see it as it goes through the process? And thank you, guys. I've sat on Riverboat, so I know what it means to read those applications and go over and over and over them. Thank you so much for your time and energy.
And yes, thank you, Ms. Allen, for that. We got the idea from the Riverboat Grant Committee, and the spreadsheet we were just looking at is attached in the resolution. So if anyone looks for it, they'll find it in there.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Okay, our next resolution authorizing the position of part-time administrative coordinator for the American Rescue Plan Committee to replace the temporary administrative assistant position and corresponding budget adjustment for ARPC program manager. If I could please get a motion in a second to discuss and potentially pass this resolution. Kenyon will move it. Brown will second. Essentially what this is creating a part-time permanent for the life of this grant position at the county for our assistant Jenny. She's done great work for us. She runs our meetings, does the minutes and agendas, and it's the time that we now either decide to bring her on or not have this position at all. So we did what we could to work with her, and it's been a great fit so far. We've got the job description there. I think Mr. Phillips handed out to everyone, and will be sent digitally if anyone else would like to see it. But essentially nothing will change other than Jenny will an actual employee of the county and be able to perform all the functions all the other recording clerks can perform. And that's with also a budget adjustment for Mr. Phillips's position per Mr. Onzik, who realized we needed to do that. So thought, hey, let's just put it all into one resolution. So are there any questions or comments on this resolution?
Brown with a question.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification, and I think I understand it, but God only knows what the next 2 or 3 years are going to bring. And we don't yet have our second tranche of the money from the Treasury Department. And we still have a lot of work to do when it comes to all this ARP money. But should things progress very fastly, very quickly, and should we expend all that money, and should there not be a lot of work to do 2 years from now or a year and a half from now, this is just a more or less not to exceed 20 hours a week, correct? So if Jenny isn't working, Jenny's not getting paid.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Sanchez, yes, I would concur with what Mr. Brown just said, and perhaps there should be an edit on there. It says the whereas when it defines salary of $25 per hour for an initial period of 90 days, but it says with a schedule of 20 hours per week. Should that say not to exceed 20 hours a week or up to 20 hours a week so that there is some flexibility to that point?
Because that would be a state's attorney question. So yeah, that's a good point, the technicality of the language.
Because that would guarantee Jenny 20 hours a week for as long as this position exists. And the work may not be available for her.
Good afternoon, Vincent Coyle from the State Attorney's Office. I believe the section that you're referring to is just referring back to the prior resolution that allowed for the temporary staffing for this position. And so that section, that's all it is just referring and giving background information is the prior resolutions that dealt with this position. So
where does it say up to, but no more than?
I think you would have to go probably to the now therefore be it resolved.
Okay, can we take it down to that point?
Does the resolution incorporate the recitals?
Not to, does say that? Okay. That's, and Jenny, no offense, but
no, none taken.
You understand what we're talking about.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Mr. Martin.
This is magnificently redundant, but I misread things to some degree when I looked at the agenda and reviewed this. This is not a new employee. This is a conversion. Am I correct? And this is a conversion of our existing very competent, well, in theory, we don't know until the paper goes out, but we're replacing our current staff person with a more permanent position. So is that I am correct in that, right?
Yes, we're creating an actual staff position with the county.
Okay.
But for the duration of the grant cycle.
I feel a little like Emily Latella then. I just say, never mind. But I have one last question of Vince, and I don't have it in front of me any longer because I don't have the resolution. Relative to the whereas and the 20 hours and all that, do we incorporate, I've seen it sometimes and sometimes not, if we incorporate the recitals into the document, that could cause some confusion. And we probably, do we record on these? Do you incorporate the recitals into and make them binding as part of the thought process? I mean, I just want to clear here that this is going to be up to 20 hours. And I hate to have language in it that conflicts, even if it's quote unquote not binding. I hate to have language in it that conflicts with reality.
So to answer your question, I think if I understand correctly, if you want to take that section out, the whereas where it talks about the prior, so it isn't confusing or conflicting, you can. The binding language that you're going to be concerned with is the now therefore be it resolved language, which does set out the parameters. So
can you scroll, Blair? Can you scroll down to the end of the recitals?
There you go, right there.
Now therefore.
That's fine. I don't want to overcook it. Yeah. I just want to make sure that we don't have conflicting language in the document. Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, Leonard, could I ask?
Leonard, go for it. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Vince, I wanted to ask a question with respect to this resolution. I have no problem with it. 2 points I wanted to make. The whereas kind of gives us a history of what was going on. The now therefore is the new action being taken. So I understand that, and I think we all do. My other concern was on the health insurance. If she's not working more than 20 hours a week, what if she works less than 20 hours a week? Does that still qualify her for the benefits?
That is a good question. That would have to run. I know this was run through Human Services with Jamie Labrillo to go over all those issues. I believe once it hits over 20 hours, that's kind of where the insurance benefits come in. Up for the under, I don't know.
Yeah, 20 hours is
right
where it starts. But I'm just wondering, if we get to a point where we only need her, 15 or 18 hours, is there any violation of our rules with respect to health insurance on that?
Not that I'm aware of, but certainly that's something that we can run by.
Yeah, I think.
Jamie Labrillo.
Yeah, and I'm all for this resolution. I have no problem with it. I just think before we move it forward, we should have that defined so that she doesn't have any problems down the road.
And I think that's going to be very good.
Mr. Leonard, real quick, we did have Ms. Labrillo look at this, Executive Director of Human Resources, and she had no issues when it came to insurance. So we can get just a re-verification of that understanding from her, and I can provide that to everyone. Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. I would also like a re-verification from the state's attorney's office that if it is under 20 hours a week, will she still qualify for the health insurance? And that's really a key factor. It's important to her. It's important to everyone.
I would totally agree with what Mr. Leonard is saying. If it's 19 hours a week and we keep it at that, also, what is the flexibility for Jenny if 1 month she's insured and the next month she's not? I mean, it's very hard to be able to, can I go to the doctor this month or next month?
I think it's an easy situation that we can resolve, but we do have to define it.
Yeah, and my understanding is that because this is a part-time position, the only part-time positions at the county that are offered health insurance benefits are county board members.
That's correct.
So just, I think by default of definition, she would not qualify for the insurance benefits was my understanding.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that she does. So let's do what we have to do to make sure it works. I don't want her to take a full-time permanent position here on a temporary basis with the understanding she's getting health insurance. And then she finds out that $16,000 of her package isn't valid. So we just need to get that verified if we have to make a change to our rules and regulations, because Mr. Sanchez is right. The only people that qualify for the health insurance at 20 hours a week are the board members and no one else. So I think we do have to get that better defined, and we can do it. It's not a big deal. We just need to do it before we pass this resolution.
And I do want to thank you all for, it's odd for me to be here while you're having this conversation. I appreciate all this about the health insurance and making sure that's available to me. But I do want to say, thankfully, I do not need health insurance at this time, so I would be waiving that benefit. So I just thought it was in there as part of, you know, the legal.
See, I would just have to say, before you waive this, make sure your plan is as good as this plan.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, I will ask Ms. Labrillo to follow up with us and just provide a little more background on that. And if we need to amend it at executive committee or something like that, you know, we can do so. But my understanding was everybody had eyes on this and there were no issues. So.
Well, we can always move it forward, Mr. Chairman, if you want, with the understanding that this consideration is explained and defined properly to give the protection to the individual.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Leonard. And that would be my suggestion. The sooner we can create this position, the better. It just makes a lot of things easier on the back end, especially when putting agendas together and things like that and posting information to the county website. So I see Mr. Coyle stepped up to the microphone. Do you have something, Mr. Coyle?
Yes, it's. I was just going to add, I believe that this committee does meet on the 31st, which would be before the executive. So however the committee wants to do it, we can report at the executive committee or this next committee. Just let us know.
Bring it back here.
This committee.
Yeah.
No,
yes,
it should be this committee.
But I mean, do you want to do it today or on the 31st?
Wait, the 31st. And the one thing I would caution everybody is thinking of the whole. So if we do for one, you have to do for whole. So if there's another employee you'd like to bring on for another committee or whatever, that would work up to 20 hours a week, this template would have to roll over to them, because what you do for one, you got to do for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not they need insurance or not.
Okay, well, so we have a motion on the table. If somebody would like to move to postpone it until the next meeting of this committee, which does fall before executive, then I would entertain that, obviously, at this time.
Leonard moves to postpone this resolution until the March 31st meeting that we're having of this committee. And at that time, we will have a complete definition of what can and cannot be included.
I believe it's the March 30th meeting.
March 30th. Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to
Where's your second at?
Mr. Brown. Sorry. Mr. Leonard moved to send this to our next committee meeting on March 30th. And we have a second with Mr. Brown. Any discussion on this move? Okay, clerk, please call the roll.
Bates?
Bates, yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Braz?
Braz, yes.
Gums? Gums?
Gums, yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strothman,
Strathman, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes. Okay, we will bring it up at our next meeting and have all of the information put together for you and get everyone's questions answered and move it to the full county board. Okay, we have one more resolution before we get out of here, clarifying the intent of resolution 21-513 to authorize the American Rescue Plan accountant to assist with non-American Rescue Plan related accounting. I will ask for a motion in a second to discuss and potentially pass this resolution.
Leonard moves.
Leonard moves.
I'll second.
Ross seconds. This came to us. We did pass a resolution previously. That's 21-513 that authorized the hiring of an assistant state's attorney and also an accountant in finance. And there has been some delay in hiring an accountant due to the concerns of our finance director that the duties of this position may not, when it relates to the American Rescue Plan work, may not be very substantial at all. And so he wanted to clarify and wanted to get this clarification from us, from the county board, that he can hire someone, bring them on to perform non-American Rescue Plan duties, and then where needed, when necessary, to provide services for this committee. So that being said, this is going to be, in any case, a very good benefit to the finance department, who always could use a little extra help. They work many, many hours, maybe even some hours unpaid, just to get everything done for this county. So in any case, this will be a good benefit for their department. If there are any questions or comments on this resolution, I will take that at this time.
Mr. Chairman, Leonard, with one question.
Go ahead, Mr. Leonard.
What I'm wondering is really twofold. I mean, it's hard to say how many hours this accountant will put into the American Rescue Plan. But my real question is, who is funding this accountant? Is it the American Rescue Plan money or the finance department's budget?
So it will be coming from our COVID savings account. So it's not coming from the finance budget or the American Rescue Plan money, unless there are specific American Rescue Plan tasks performed by this assistant accountant.
So once the COVID money is gone, then it will be funded through the general fund, through the finance department?
Well, the original resolution, it only authorized this position for the life of the American Rescue Plan fund. So once that is depleted, the county would have the decision to either relieve that person in that position, or to create that as a permanent position, or bring that person on as a permanent employee.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this resolution? And hopefully you don't hear the people yelling on the street behind me. Ms. Bates.
So do we still need an American Rescue Plan accountant if Mr. Onzik is saying they won't have many duties?
I think where some of that hesitation is coming from in my conversations with him and his deputy, Erica Wagner, is that some of the things that are required for this American Rescue Plan work that we're doing, some of it can only be done by Mr. Onzik himself, just due to the scope and complexity of it. And so that was his initial concern is, well, if I'm going to end up doing, 80% of the work needed, this person is not going to have much left over to do. Yeah. And so this is a way to ensure that the finance department has the resources they need so that Mr. Onzik can devote the time required to assist us in this work.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing and seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Bates?
Yes.
Brown?
Brown, yes.
Froz?
Froz, yes.
Gums?
Gums, yes.
Kenyon?
Yes.
Leonard?
Leonard, yes.
Martin?
Martin, yes.
Molina?
Molina, yes.
Strothman?
Yes.
Tepe?
Tepe, yes.
And Sanchez?
Sanchez, yes. Okay, we have nothing for old business. We have no need for executive session. Is there anything that anyone in the committee has at this point that they would like to bring up under old business before I move on? Sorry. Okay, hearing and seeing none. I think
how well we approach this and move through our agenda and don't drag on and on and on. That's a compliment to you, committee members.
I'm not going to take that personally because I didn't run public health this morning, but
well, you weren't here. You have to buy us something and bring it back.
You got it. All right. I will take a motion, Mr. Kenyon, to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion. We adjourn.
And a second.